Kia ora tātou, welcome back everybody, and those online as well. Right, we're through to the, actually before we get to the main item, if I could just ask the Deputy Mayor to take the seat, and we'll do, because we've got staff in the room, we will do number 12, please. And I'll just vacate from the seat.
Oh, I can't sit on this stool, can I? I thought it felt a bit different. Yes, yes. Tēnā nō tātou. Welcome back everyone for this afternoon's session. We're on item 12, page 189, and lovely to have Gabrielle here, who is our Manager of International Relations. And I'm going to ask Gabrielle if she could speak to this. This is for the approval of international travel for the Mayor in March 2025. And welcome, Gabrielle. Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Kia ora, councillors. Thank you for the opportunity to present this report to council. This report is to ask for approval for international travel for the mayor in March 2025 so that he could lead an ICT business and startup delegation to attend the 2025 Taipei Smart City Summit and Expo from 18th of March to 22nd of March 2025. I guess I'll take the report as read, but one thing I thought I would highlight to council that this is a great opportunity for our business sectors, and from our interaction with Manawa Tech and the factory, there has been very strong interest in participating in this event. The purpose of the delegation, of course, is to connect our tech and startups with leaders and decision makers from government and business sectors all over the world to exchange ideas and explore opportunities. But also it is a great opportunity to expose our products to over 150,000 odd people in the audience in Taipei. So it is a great opportunity to hopefully for our business to increase, if not double up their profits going forward. And another opportunity is that we have already started a conversation with the Taipei Startup Park, and there might be an opportunity there for us to connect our innovation and startup funds with the investment funds available from our partners. So those are the two highlights I would like to bring to your attention. Other than that, I'm happy to answer any question.
Thank you, Gabrielle, for that. Do we have any questions? Yes, Councillor Naylor. Oops.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks, Gabrielle. Just a question around the delegation. It says that there would be a 5-person delegation somewhere in the material. How many of those people are funded through council?
Through the chair, the reason why it says a delegation of 5 is because that is what the package is offered to us. So it's up to 5 person delegation is covered for accommodation and transportation in Taipei. The makeup of the delegation is currently undecided. Of course, we would prioritize for our local business and startup delegates, and if there is any opportunity for council officers to accompany, that will be entirely up to the chief executive to decide after seeing what is the actual makeup of the delegation.
So is the intent from the chief executive at the moment to send staff for this delegation or not?
Through the chair, given the connection that we do have with Manawa Tech, and so then my intention would be looking to send at least one staff member with the delegation.
Okay, thank you. That's all from me.
Thank you, Councillor Naylor. Any further questions? Thank you, Gabrielle. You may take a seat there. Now we're moving into comments at this moment in time. I'd like to ask for comments. Yes, the councillor. Oh, sorry. Yes, I've been away a bit. So I'd like to call on a seconder for the recommendation that the council grant approval for the mayor to lead an information and communication technology ICT business and startup delegation to attend the 2025 Taipei Summit and Expo from the 18th of March until the 22nd of March 2025. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Bowen. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Hapeta.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Very happy to support this, particularly as it's been sponsored and supported by Taipei Computer Association. It's really generously offered to paper like it's really good, but it's also a really good opportunity for us to get a look into this for our business and for the council to go over to Taipei, and I just think it'll be really good for us and for businesses. Hopefully they'll take up that opportunity to go over and to look at how they can partner businesses over there for the city. So hopefully they'll take that opportunity up, and I think it's a really good opportunity to do that. So thank you for bringing that opportunity to the council chamber. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hapeta. Any further comment? Councillor Naylor.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. I am hesitant to support this, not so much from a financial perspective, as I acknowledge that much of those costs are covered. The Mayor would be away, absent from a community committee on the 19th of March, and I don't recall the Mayor being present for any community committees in the current year, and I have got a concern around the priority of what we're doing local, and I think for the Mayor to be here and show leadership locally is probably more of a priority for me, so I won't be supporting this.
Thank you. Councillor Wood.
Just a point of order, Madam Chair. I think it's worth noting that the Mayor was present at our last community committee meeting.
Thank you for that clarification. No further comment before I wind up? I do want to say Councillor Fitzgerald. Kia ora.
Thank you. Just clarifying, I don't have it in my diary of a community meeting on the 19th of March. Thank you, Madam.
One moment, thank you. We'll check that out, Councillor Fitzgerald. Ka pai. Yes, I think we've had that confirmed. Thank you. Right. Before we go to the vote, I want to say a few things. Firstly, I take umbrage to the fact that someone would think that our mayor isn't present in our city, moving around, has his finger on the pulse, and he's here, there and everywhere, and I've seen that. So I just disagree with that statement. Secondly, having returned just this week from in the last 48 hours from China. And I'm very grateful for the Manager of International Relations who accompanied me on that trip, for her knowledge and expertise in enabling me to broker some relationships that wouldn't have been brokered otherwise. And I think in Palmerston North, if we're not on the global scene, then our reputation, our ability to, people just won't know who we are. We've heard about the Food HQ kōrero this morning, that they've had to build that up, and not many people know that. We want that out and about. In fact, that was one of the topics that came in China that we were asked about, and we were proudly able to say, look, we do have a wonderful city, we have Food HQ and all the other things, and people were saying, well, we'd like to have a relationship. And I think that if you just stay local, you're going to be insular. Whereas if we have a relationship or interact with those in global communities, then that puts us out there in terms like possibly having access to resources or knowledge that we don't or can't get here. We know that these are constrained times and the government are pulling back on a whole lot of things, and that leaves us as a council having to find ways and solutions. So I'm very supportive of this, and I think the fact that we don't have to pay more than $500 is a huge investment. I also know that the Mayor has the knowledge and the expertise of generating conversations and brokering relationships or enhancing those relationships for the betterment of Palmerston North. So with that there, folks, I'm going to put this recommendation to the vote. Thank you. Can I ask that you vote on this, please? That has passed 12-1. Thank you, everyone. I'll now hand this back to the Mayor. Thank you.
Kia ora, everyone. Look, in the interest of just staff sitting in the chamber for long periods of time, we're going to move to number 14 before we get into the budget, and hopefully we get through this relatively quickly. This is around the submission on the principles of Treaty of Waitangi Bill, and invite Todd to speak to that. Todd, kia ora, floor's yours.
Kia ora tātou. Tautoko te ahu o te karakia, hei whakatūwhera i te wahanga kōrero. So, councillors, we've placed this question before you based on the sentiments in the chamber, especially over a number of recent issues, including the Local Electoral Act matters from earlier this year. Officers were of the view that the matters raised by the Treaty of Waitangi Principles Bill were a priority for elected members, and that you would want to have the opportunity to formally endorse a submission before it went to the Justice Committee due in early January. When this was first mooted, there was uncertainty on how many councils would actually choose to submit, but in recent days it's become clear that if we didn't submit, we'd probably be out of step with the sector at the moment. This whole week, it seems like most councils are addressing this issue directly. Some of those councils, the staff have put a draft submission in with this equivalent meeting. We chose not to. However, there has been significant work done to advance a draft. The draft does reflect the sentiments and the content within the memo before you, but it also includes some of the sentiments from that Māori Wards submission from earlier in the year. But really what our focus has been is on the value of the principles in providing a guidance for our journey with our iwi partners Rangitane and with the wider Māori community. The draft doesn't, or it wasn't intended to include a section-by-section analysis of the bill. We believe that's been well addressed by many others, and that Council's most unique contribution was to reflect the value of the principles, the conventional principles to this council and our community. We also believe it would be a strong expression of the partnership with Rangitane. They don't, unlike us, have the opportunity to really not respond to quite a range of changes within legislation regarding the treaty principles, which are coming up next year. But we do believe that by putting these sentiments forward as a submission, it will also be supportive to our treaty partners in terms of the fact that obviously they'll all also responding to other pieces of legislation which they'll need to respond to. If elected members agree on making a submission, staff will take guidance on what are the best settings to ensure feedback. Just a final note, even though it is very unlikely this bill will progress beyond first reading, it has become a de facto national referendum on the value of the principles and the treaty, and it has probably done more to progress work we've been trying to do with governance and community development to get the community involved in thinking about elections, enrolment and participation. So there are some positives, I guess. We're making the most of those opportunities now that the community is engaged. Ka koutou I tēnei wā. Kia ora tata.
Thanks, Todd. A number of questions. Councillor Johnson.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Kia ora, Todd. So in 5.3 you've said the council can also consider whether representation would speak to the submission at the Select Committee in February. Do you want that guidance now, or are you thinking that we would make that decision in February when it comes back?
I don't have a preference. I think there will be a huge number of submissions, and a large number of those will be wanting to be heard. So I don't know how that will be managed in terms of whether our council gets in the queue or not. But we have no, I understand, position on whether you want to decide on that today.
Okay, just from timing though, if it's reported back to council in February and the Select Committee, are hearing submissions in February, I feel like we would need to make the decision today.
Yes, you're right, councillor.
Yes, through the Mayor, that would be good if we get you guidance around that today. I agree with Todd. I think that there'll be a large number of submissions on this. I've seen the government effectively do a ballot previously to draw out who might attend or not.
Okay, well, I'll speak to that in comments. Thanks.
Councillor Barton.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thanks, Todd, for the report. I just wanted to seek your clarification that if council submits as an entity, that doesn't limit individuals' ability to also submit to the Select Committee process?
That is correct.
Councillor Wood.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I was just going to follow up on Councillor Johnson's line of questioning. I recall when we made a submission on the Māori ward referendum, I don't recall listing councillors to go and speak to it. Is that? I thought it was just a decision that the Mayor had delegated authority to send councillors.
Yeah, I think what the councillor was saying is, are we going to go and speak to it and orally?
Thank you.
Or are we going to just send in a submission and I think, good. Okay, thanks, Todd. That's the questions done. Okay, we've got a recommendation there that the council submit in opposition to the Treaty of Waitangi Principles Bill. I'm quite happy to move that, and that 2, the council agree the submission will be authorised by the Mayor and Deputy Mayor back to the council in February. I'm quite happy if you want to move it, Deputy Mayor, and I'm happy to second it. And Deputy Mayor.
Tēnā koutou. I support that the council submit in opposition to the Treaty of Waitangi Principles Bill because I think it we need to acknowledge the historical context of the Treaty of Waitangi. For nearly 2 centuries, it has been the cornerstone of our nation's identity. The principles within it have been shaped by decades of legal and political discourse. Altering these principles disregards the hard-fought progress that we have made. The treaty holds immense cultural significance for Māori communities. It is not just a legal document. It recognises the unique status of Māori as tangata whenua, the people of the land. Changing these principles risks undermining Māori cultural identity and rights that have been acknowledged for generations. Our legal system is grounded in these principles, consistently upheld by our courts. Redefining them invites legal uncertainty and potential conflicts. Moreover, these principles promote social equity by acknowledging historical injustices faced by Māori. Changing them could reverse progress towards social justice and equality. Effective policy making demands consultation and consensus, yet the introduction of this bill has lacked the necessary engagement with those directly affected. Redefining the principles of the treaty is inherently divisive and poses significant risk to our cultural heritage, legal stability, social equity, and international reputation. I urge you all to join me in supporting this recommendation and preserving the principles that guide us towards a just and inclusive society. Tēnā koutou.
Councillor Johnson.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. I do support that we submit in opposition to the Treaty of Waitangi Principles Bill, and I also have an amendment that we request that we speak to our submission. So do you want me to speak to the whole thing and include the amendment? Yeah. So I think it's very important that those of us who are here as non-Māori, as tauiwi, also speak up to say that the Treaty of Waitangi is important to us too. It's not just about Māori in this fight. This is about all of us. That, you know, the treaty gives us, non-Māori, a reason for being here. It frames how we're allowed to be in this country. And I think it's really, really important that all of us speak up in opposition to this bill. I understand that the government has said it won't progress beyond the first reading, but I think we saw the strength of feeling that's in the country when the Hīkoi came through Palmerston North. We saw the strength of feeling when we saw the crowds in Wellington. And that was Māori and non-Māori standing together. So I think it's really important in this chamber that we stand together as Māori and non-Māori, and that we tautoko the immense feeling of frustration and, I guess, anger that this principles bill has caused to arise in the country. So I will definitely be supporting that we submit in opposition to it, and I hope you will too. And in terms of requesting to speak to the submission, I think it's very important that those who are able to speak and who are not intimidated by the process put themselves forward to speak. There will be plenty of people who may hesitate to go to a select committee and speak. It can be, you know, as we notice with people coming into the council chamber, can be a bit intimidating for people. So I think it's all the more important that those who are comfortable to do that speak to it. And I think you'll find that nearly every council in the country will be doing the same thing. I just noticed at lunchtime that Hutt City Council had voted unanimously to submit in opposition and to speak to their submission. So I think it's very important that we front up on this. Our partners are expecting it of us, and the kawanata that we signed means that we need to stand together in partnership. So I urge your support. Thank you.
Councillor Barn.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Speaking first to the submission, along with colleagues on either side, and Councillor Fitzgerald and Councillor Barrett, I represented council when we spoke to our submission on the Māori Wards bill. My reflection following that was that it's incredibly important, as Councillor Johnson said, for non-Māori to speak up in that process and to speak to the value that we saw in that particular conversation. Not that we liked the outcome of it, but that it was important for us to participate. And that feedback came strongly from Māori colleagues in that space as well, that they valued us standing in partnership and giving effect to the partnership that we've agreed locally with Rangatane and how that stands with Māori as tangata whenua. So absolutely think if we're going to submit in opposition, then we should also be available to speak to that. We bring our mana to that discussion, if not to the process. In general, I think it's incredibly important that we submit in opposition to the Treaty of Waitangi Principles Bill. One of the outcomes, should that bill progress, would be to remove references to the treaty principles from all legislation, which would include the Local Government Act, which we are all sworn to uphold and do so manfully, which says in order to recognise and respect the Crown's responsibility to take appropriate account of the principles of the Treaty of Waitangi and to maintain and improve opportunities for Māori to contribute to local government decision-making processes, Parts 2 and 6 of the Local Government Act provide principles and requirements for local authorities that are intended to facilitate participation by Māori in local authority decision-making processes. Colleagues, for no other reason than to maintain that, it will be worth us submitting in opposition to this. I think we all know that in our community, Māori do not find it easy to submit to processes that are set up to exclude them. So the Local Government Act, specifically in referencing the treaty principles, enables that participation, and this is one small way in which we can support that into the future.
Colleagues, look, it's pretty important that we do support this, and I think it's been well articulated. I mean, rather than being anti-government, this is about supporting our greatest city partner, and Rangitāne o Manawatu, and they've asked for support, and in tough times you go and support people. Palmerston City and our mana whenua Rangitāne have one of New Zealand's best local government iwi relationships in the country, and I personally do think we should be there. So I can recall, I wasn't here, but I think I can recall the councillors led by you, Councillor Fitzgerald, go down to the select committee, and they were pretty, I'd have to say, pretty dismissive of others, but they took you very seriously, and it was a standout. So, you know, even online, and sometimes online stuff doesn't look as good or feel as good as in person, but it was very real, and I think you did make quite an impact. So I think we should, if we do agree, and I'm sure we will, to submit that we do go and speak to it and make sure we put our best foot forward. So I hope you can support this, and I'll pass back to you, Deputy Mayor, for a right of reply. Ah, okay. Okay.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. If I could be down as moving the amendment. Yeah, we'll make it as substantive.
Yep, can we just make it the whole thing? We've got a big agenda, so.
Yeah. Tēnā koutou. Just to say, Mr. Mayor, thank you to those who have spoken and to our council, because it's true, we have had an exemplary relationship as Rangitāne and the Palmerston North City Council, not just this term, but in previous terms since the beginning of the city. And I think that others would be envious if they knew, you know, how well we do get on, and it's a genuine partnership. And you don't have to agree to everything, but we do come here and sit around the table with a genuine desire to work together and to represent everyone in our city as well. From a mana whenua perspective, I think everything that has been said earlier stands for what we are hoping to get across to in the submission, and I'm really hopeful that central government take heed of that, because the ramifications would be just too great and we would lose too much ground on what has been hard fought for many, many years, for almost 200 years. So I thank you all for what you have done in the past and what you will continue to do, no doubt. But I am proud, like I believe all of you would be too, about Palmerston North City Council and the wonderful relationship and genuine, authentic partnership that we have with Rangitane. And as I mentioned, it would be the envy of many others around the motu. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, kia ora koutou, katoa.
Kia ora. Okay, we is in front of us and we will vote, please. It's passed 10 votes for, 3 against and 1 abstention. All right, we now move to the main act, and that is item 11 around our annual budget for 25-26. And if I could ask, is Cam? Yeah, Cam coming up, and Scott, please. Cameron Mackay, our CFO, and Scott Manser, our finance manager, please.
Kia ora koutou, Mr Mayor and elected members. Obviously here today to present the draft annual budget for your consideration. We've got a short PowerPoint presentation just to overlay some of the key points for you. And then we'll take questions after that, if that's okay. Help if I turn it on. Just a bit of a scene setter of where we're at in terms of process. So last time you considered your provisional assessment of the capital program. This time you have before you the draft annual budget, including the operating picture. Then we'll move forward into considering the consultation document and then into consultation. So that's sort of the runway we have ahead of us. And just a bit of a recap as to where we've landed in terms of the capital program compared to the long-term plan. I thought it might be helpful just to clarify and go over a few of the forecasting assumptions in the draft operating budget. And there are a few that we've looked at. So, but before I do so, I'll just give a bit of a general overview of the big picture as I see it. So, the LTP Year 2 has been the basis of pulling together this annual budget. So that's been our point of reference. The total rates revenue increase in the LTP was 8.9%, and before you today you also, as would have it, an 8.9% increase. The budget as well, and you'll recall previous conversations we had around some transport budget emissions. The budget in front of you has those incorporated at the 8.9%, and it also includes fully funding the footpath renewal program that you agreed to last time, which previously had some Waka Kotahi funding attached to that. we've also been, I guess, in some respects, had some help on our side in terms of recent movements in terms of the OCR, and when interest rates are moving, so they have moved downwards on us since we set the long-term plan, and that is reflected as well in terms of what you have in front of you. In terms of inflation, just to step through the components. In terms of inflation, so we've taken a look at what the Burl inflation factors are for next year. They've been recently updated in October and released. They suggest that inflation is actually slightly higher than what was set in the long-term plan, but we have at this point suggested to you that we will operate, we'll put forward a budget with the inflation factor as what the long-term plan had suggested. I've already talked about interest rates. I won't cover that again, but just talking about the remuneration forecasting assumption. Just need to cover off, I guess there's a bit of an increase to what was in the long-term plan suggested in front of you, and I'll just step through the reasoning behind that, just so that you have that. When we set the long-term plan budget, one aspect of remuneration is overtime, and we do have staff who are on call and respond to call-outs. You'll recall some things like the water main that was repaired in the middle of the night recently. The overtime budget that we've put in the long-term plan needs correcting. It wasn't actually put in there at the levels that we have had in the past. And so we're suggesting to you that that's something that's necessary for our ability to respond to those call-outs and the like. Second one is a bit of a, I guess it's, in some respects it's a bit of a success story, but it has a budgetary impact. So some of the elected members that have been around for the last term will recall we adjusted our vacancy factor to being a bit higher post-COVID because we weren't necessarily filling the positions at a reasonable pace. We're having quite a different, I guess, success problem depending on what way you look at it now. We are being quite successful in not only attracting staff but retaining them as well. So we're in an environment where we're actually the assumption that we have had around our vacancy factor is causing some challenges in terms of the fact that we are actually able to get people in the door. We're not having to go out for multiple rounds of recruitment as what we were back in those times. And thirdly, there's a small number of additional FTEs that are proposed. They've been offset fully by increases, and you'll see that there's higher revenue assumptions in some areas that than what the LTP suggested. So we're suggesting that to meet some of our service levels, particularly in the likes of the planning area, there's some FTEs suggested, and that's offset by additional revenue because we were able to actually recover that. Overheads, firstly, just want to acknowledge that when we make a change to overhead methodologies, it causes some difficulties in terms of comparison, and do want to acknowledge that. We've needed to revisit one aspect of the overhead methodology, and I'll give you the detailed picture as to what that is. So, as we used our new finance model in anger, I guess, we had one particular program in the long-term plan that's loan funded operating program that's in the digital space. what we did was the loan credit is sitting in the bucket that gets allocated in the overheads, but because it's an operating program, the operating program actually left itself in the external piece, and you'll see that when you look at supporting the organisation costs, when you're looking at some of those breakdowns. The issue is that we've got a credit going around all the other activities, but the credit that it's offsetting isn't in the allocation model, so we just need to put that in there. It doesn't change the costs, it doesn't change the overall funding or costs of the organisation, but it is the correct way of actually allocating that. And secondly, you'll be aware that the organisation's had a recent realignment that's altered some of the reporting lines and the like, and so this budget reflects now where the overheads related to those activities should sit. I've already covered off the transport costs in terms of the emissions, so we have reflected that in this budget position that you have in front of you. Just want to highlight to you that in terms of active transport, the funding that we have for that, we've matched to the NZTA funding at this stage. Utilities insurance, and it feels like I'll talk about budgets, there's something to say in this area. Some of you will be aware that particularly gas prices have increased at a faster pace than inflation. In fact, for us, they have doubled. And whilst we don't have a huge reliance on gas throughout the organisation, there is a reliance in some areas where we still have gas. So that's about a $300,000 impact for us. In terms of insurance, as you know, that's a market that is quite responsive to events and things that happen around us. At this point in time, we haven't made any provision for increasing our insurance budget beyond what we have already provided for in the long-term plan. And at this point, we think that we will cope with that budget, but of course there's still a wee way to go between now and when we actually adopt the budget. If there's a big event that occurs, that sometimes plays out when we start having those renewal discussions. So I guess it's a bit of a caveat there that at the moment we think we're going to live within our means, but who knows what's ahead of us. In terms of revenue, we've made some assumptions at this point around fees and charges that move in line with inflation indices and the like. There's a bit of a section about where we're at with that. We're still looking at that's an area we're still putting a bit of focus on, just to make sure that we have explored the opportunities. First, we have to get the cost base budgeted before we can then really truly assess the full implication of fees and charges. But at this point, we've applied inflation indice in most areas. There are the odd activity that doesn't currently meet the revenue and financing policy. That's not different to what you actually adopted in the long-term plan. Probably one area that we might have to look into is in the cemeteries area, because that is a high user of utilities in particular. So we may just have to, we'll be assessing whether we need to alter the fees there to bring that back into compliance. We're still looking at that. And we've reflected the increased dividend from expectations from PNAL in this budget. This slide really is just to show you the draft operating position as a whole. I've gone through the key components in the previous slides, but the result of all of those is what you see on the screen. And just to highlight at the moment, the total rates increase in the LTP was 8.9%, and it's still sitting at 8.9% at this point with those changes factored in. Just a few considerations, just to go through for your decision making today. You'll be aware around local water done well and the work that's required in that space, and there's some decisions for you to make down the track with that. At the moment, it's looking like we'll have about 600,000 of Better Off funding at the end of this financial year that we'll be able to carry into next year to keep some of those efforts going. But provided, if you decide to go down the line of establishing a CCO, perhaps that's an option you might consider. That will require some effort and work to do so. So preliminary, we're thinking it's probably closer to 1.5 million to do that level of work in total. What I would suggest to you is, because you would be creating an asset in essence on the balance sheet, you would fund that difference by way of loan, and that would be appropriate to do that. The other one I want to talk about is not in your papers actually, but it's relatively new, and I say relatively new, it's come out in the last week or so to our knowledge. There is a consultation piece out at the moment from Taumata Arawai around the cost of the regulator, and they are consulting at the current time on spreading that cost across all TAs to cover that. It's likely to be in the vicinity of 400,000 for us. That is a cost that, if that gets passed, we are likely to have no ability to not pay that. They will simply charge us for that. So I just need to bring that to your attention, that that's relatively new. It's in consultation. They've got a few options that they're considering, but most of those options are more around the range of the levy and how they might distribute it, as opposed to whether or not it will actually be a levy. In terms of council and committee referrals, these are in your papers in section 7, and they're there for your consideration to add into the budget. I haven't put a dollar value next to Centrepoint rebuild support, because that's probably something that you need to consider if and how much you might provide for that. There were a range of options considered at the time. In terms of consultation, if you do have some thoughts around what might be something that you want to consider in terms of our drafting the consultation document, we'd be happy to hear those. We've got a few items that we think might be worthy of discussing. Probably what decisions you might make around the rating system and the rating valuation that you heard about earlier today might be one of those topics. And there's a few other items here for your consideration, but if you have any views on that, we'd be happy to hear them. So just in a bit of a wrap up, what we're trying to do today is we're trying to get a reasonably good steer as to the final drafting of the draft budget for your consideration. Your comfort around the assumptions that we've outlined and your thoughts around some of those items for consideration, and the overall, I guess, operating picture. So that's where we're at. Happy to take any questions.
Thanks, Cam. Scott, from you?
No, but I will just add a thanks to my colleagues around the organisation and the senior lead team for getting us to this point with the budget to have it here pre-Christmas, which is an outstanding effort.
Yeah, thank you. So, Cam, just before I go to the councillors, so the costs of, what was the authority? It was the water regulator, is that right?
Yeah, it is. So the cost of the regulator, as I understand it, is going to be distributed amongst all TAs.
You're joking, really?
No,
But isn't that a government entity?
I'm not joking.
Unbelievable. Okay. Councillor Harper.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Cameron Scott. Just a couple of questions from me. One was going back to the insurance on page 77, and you talked about not putting anything in there in terms of an increase, and on 4.12. Is that a risk to us by not putting anything in there for a contingency? Because looking at the insurance industry, they print money. So how do you think not putting anything in as a contingency going forward is what we should do?
Yeah, thanks for the question. In terms of, so we haven't got nothing in there. It is being increased as per what the long-term plan had suggested the increase to be. I don't have the figure in my to hand, just exactly how much it is. I guess at this point we don't have a better reference point to suggest anything higher than that.
I just reading between the lines on 4.12, I just read red herring there that just sort of screamed at me to say we don't have enough.
The whole thing around insurances is they tend to react quickly if there are particular events that occur, but there are some parts of the insurance market that's easing, as far as I'm aware, and there are others that still have some pressure on it. So what we're hoping will happen is that they'll balance out and be within our budgetary provision at this point. But yes, that's always an item that's probably going to have an element of risk to it because of just the nature of the insurance market and its, I guess, reaction to events at a point in time.
Okay.
Can I just, sorry, Councillor, before you get to the next question, just get the CE to respond, because there has been some work done, and I understand we've already increased the budget significantly.
Yeah, through the chair. So as Cam's outlined, the budget that's in there is in line with what we thought it might be in the LTP. It's just insurance costs, as you know, are continuing to escalate. So there is work that continues to happen across the region, across the Manawatu-Wanganui shared service arrangements and that as well. We continue to have conversations there. Also considerations of, self-insurance for some particular items and that as well. So all of these things that were flavour some time ago are kind of coming back into the mix now as well anyway. So we are keeping a very, very close eye on that, and Steve does quite a lot of work in that area as well.
Okay. Second question, and it's my final one, Mr. Mayor, is around consultation. You did say you wanted a pointer in that area. I just wanted to know, well, I don't know whether Liv wanted to come up, but I do think we should be talking about the rating system in consultation. I do think that that's what our community will want to talk to us about as well. So I don't know if you want to, how you want to handle that.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I think we will have something around the rating system, and depending on your decisions that you might make in February, particularly around the valuation impact on the rates incidents, it's probably something that you will have in the consultation document.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks, Mr.
Councillor Johnson.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Still reeling from that 400,000. So just on that, is that a per annum or is that a one-off?
Per annum.
Yeah, I thought so. Okay, I'll just let my blood pressure settle.
We're not funding police or FENS or anything else, so...
No, we won't shoot the messenger, Mr. Mayor. Okay, moving on temporarily. Fees and charges. I recall that we asked for fees and charges to come to us at annual budget time, because we've been caught out in the past where we kind of approve a draft annual budget and then fees and charges come in and then we can't change them because they're factored into the budget. So if we're not getting fees and charges till the 12th of February, is there going to be opportunity to change them at that point, or are they kind of locked in by the decisions we make today?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, you don't adopt the draft budget for consultation until the 5th of March. So in my view, I think you would have an opportunity if there is something that you want to look at.
And in terms of focus of the consultation document, I think you just said you were going to put a link in for local water done well, but are we going to do more than just put a link in? Are we going to talk about, for instance, the costs that we've got associated with local water done well?
Through Mr. Mayor, I probably don't have a specific answer to that, only to say that we would be consulting separately on local water done well, particularly around the decisions that you made last week. So
I do understand that, but I guess I would expect if there are extra costs, which there clearly are, associated with local water done well, that should go into their annual budget consultation.
I think we probably could make some reference and some commentary around that. Yep.
Okay. Particularly in the light of that recent bomb that just dropped there. Are there any other changes to budgets that are significant that you haven't mentioned?
Are you referring to what's within what you have in front of you,
Yeah.
or what's to come? So no, I'm not aware of any, councillor, that I can bring to your attention, except for what I've already highlighted to you.
So if there is a significant change in a budget that we can see, is that likely to be due to reallocation of overheads?
Yeah. So what we try to do, and you'll note you've got the more detailed report in one of the appendices. We try to outline what are the key changes to each of those sub-activities, and where the comment is the change is due to the overhead allocation changing is genuinely driving the change.
It's just I know in the past when we've gone out for consultation and members of the public have looked at budgets and compared them and seen a big change from one annual budget to the next, you know, they're naturally suspicious that we're cutting. So would we be able to include some information about that in the consultation document so that people don't waste their time submitting saying, oh, you're cutting back on this area, when in fact we're not, it's just an overhead change?
Yeah, we'll give some thought to how we might do that. I think because it has changed the comparison to LTP Year 2, it could be something that's worth mentioning to say, as you're reading this, please be aware of the impact of this change.
Okay, that would be helpful, thank you. That's it for now, Mr. Mayor. Although I will have some comments later on.
Councillor Naylor.
Thank you both. Just in regards to the information that you've given us about the Taumata ROI 400,000, what is your advice about how we should fund that, or are you suggesting that we should include that on top of this budget, or is there room anywhere to find it within this budget?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, my suggestion is that I think you need to include that in the budget. It's a substantial cost that we didn't have previously.
And do you just automatically do that in the information that you bring back in February, or do we need to have any resolution to do with that today?
I think it's helpful that you do resolve to include the items that aren't currently included, so that we do get direction from you that that's what you'd like us to do.
And what's our option if we don't want to include that?
Yeah, through the chair, my suggestion is that given if it's likely to be a cost that's coming from central government that is legislated and we are required to pay, by saying that you wouldn't include it, we wouldn't have any choice about that. We would simply need to make sure that we're putting it in place.
Okay, thank you. Just moving to looking at the chart on page 74 that outlines the breakdown of the increase as per LTP and then as per the draft annual budget. There's a bit of movement with a number of those items. The first one I wanted to ask about was the interest costs and debt repayment, which is quite favourable, the combination of those two going from 3.2 down to 1.6, which would be, I would have expected based on that, a 1.6 may have been reflected in a lower proposed rates increase for our community. Whereas I'm trying to understand why have officers just stuck to the 8.9? Is that coincidence that it's still 8.9, the things that have come out and then the things that have come in? Or is that intentional, or is that just accidental that it happens to be the same amount?
Through you, Mr Mayor, it's not purposeful, if that's what you're referring to, that it just happens to land at 8.9. I think try to articulate as best we can the reasons what's driven the increase back into the to the budget. If we didn't have a reduction in interest rates, the conversation we'd be having now would probably be a bit different, because we'd be saying, well, we've got this problem, how do we fund it? So what I'm saying is we didn't go 8.9 is the number. Well, let's fill it back up. It was very much that was the output of the budgeting exercise.
Okay. There's a couple of others in that chart I wanted to ask about. The revenue operating grants and subsidies. On page 77, in clause 4.16, there's the assumption that there will be no increase to fees and charges for metered parking or rubbish bags. I'm just wondering, and I understand that the parking framework was deferred to a workshop, but was that was the work that was done on that framework, did that indicate any level of additional revenue?
I don't have a answer to that. I just wonder whether someone else might be able to help me on that one.
Through you, through you, Mr. Mayor. No, there was no level of detail in the parking framework that was going to determine fees going up or down at this stage. That's obviously a potential outcome as we get into more detailed parking management plans in certain areas of the city. But that said, yeah, so it didn't get to that level of detail at this stage.
Okay, and when we normally review our fees and charges, is that usually one that would go up annually?
Through Mr. Mayor, I can't speak to too far in the distant future, but my understanding is that it went through a period where it stayed relatively stable, and then last year we made quite a step change to the parking fees and put them up. So you did actually make quite a change in the current year to that particular fee.
Okay, thank you. And the third area I wanted to ask about in that chart, that table 3, the labour costs that were indicating a 2.3% of the increase in rates now shows 3.6%, and you have outlined the reasons for that. I think, and thank you for the other additional information that was provided via email of the breakdown of that extra 1.7 million. I'm just wondering, I understand that the 500,000 of that extra is offset by revenue. The other 1.2, was there any consideration of whether that could be, those factors could be accommodated within the year 2 LTP increase, which does reflect about a 5.something% increase?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, so just so I understand the question, you're asking whether that could have been absorbed in the LTP movement for remuneration?
Yeah.
I don't believe so, and the reason behind that is because one of those changes is a change in vacancy assumption, which we had a static, I guess, assumption across the 10 years for vacancy factor, which is now not how things are actually playing out. We are seeing lower levels of vacancy. We're seeing roles being able to be filled much sooner than what we had in the past, as I outlined. And the other one is around the overtime provision, and that should have been included in the long-term plan, but wasn't. I think we actually need to put that in or accommodate that somehow.
Okay, so the information that we got from Stacey this morning about the labour cost index softening and potentially going to, well, currently 3 now and potentially going to 1.5 to 2%. Does that impact on the assumptions that are made about what's needed in that area?
When we're looking at market movements, we look at what the prevailing inflation factor is at this point in time. Some of the economic data looks potentially at a future point in time, but we go off what is reported inflation indices right now, so that's what we've done.
And is that at 5.4%?
No, I think the amount in terms of assumed movements is in the vicinity of around about the 4%, which includes market and performance movements.
Okay, thank you. I think I'm nearly there, Mr. Mayor. Just one more question on page 162. There's an item there, community hubs. Where is it? Oh, citywide new community hubs, program 2343. There was $0 agreed in year 2 for this, but then there's actually been put 400,000 in the proposed annual budget. I don't recall any decisions that gave direction to that, but I'm just wondering why that's landed in there or how that came to be.
Thanks for the question. I can take that one. So you'll remember at the quarter report in November, the Chief Executive had approved a transfer of 400,000 between that program and the Pacifica Centre expansion. And part of that was to return 400,000 in the annual budget, and that's what that's doing. So 400,000 has come out of the Pacifica program and gone back into the community hubs to restore that budget for the work ahead in years 3, 4, 5.
Cool, thank you. That's helpful. That's all from me, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Bowen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm sorry, I'm just going to ask some questions about Te Mata Arawai again. I was wondering whether we could have made that be a loan, but I assume because it's an annual thing, we can't.
Yeah, you'd be correct.
Right. Nice try. It's open for consultation. Are we submitting to say no, thank you?
I might pass with the mics here, but
through the chair, we certainly will be submitting. What we will be doing is gathering direction from yourselves and from the CE before we reply to that and submit that response.
So it's not unusual for the activity of regulators to be funded by the people who benefit from that regulation. But this seems to me, in this case, this is just pass-through funding. Effectively, we're acting as a conduit to what will be our water services entity in the future. So is that, would there be grounds for us to say, don't mind that in principle, but can you hold off till you've at least done the legislation?
We could put.
You can say whatever we want you to say. That's the right answer.
Yeah.
And just noting from my read of it, that's $11.17 per household that we'll be putting onto rates. Okay. And they're also looking at a proposal for the Commerce Commission regulatory framework, which would also be proposed that we fund, a smaller amount, but also the same thing.
They're all looking at me. Through the chair, these operating costs will obviously, when we transition to any new operating model, CCO, those sorts of things, they'll become operating costs associated with that particular entity.
When that happens.
Yes, when that happens.
And in the meantime, it's on us.
In the meantime, it'll just be about, we kind of got an indication about what the figure might be, but we're not quite sure what the timing of that might be at this stage. We're assuming that that's going to occur from 1 July next year at this point. However, unless there's something definite, then that's an assumption that we're making as part of this.
Okay, thank you, Wade. think I know the answer to this, but are there other costs this year that we are passing on to ratepayers as a result of government action?
Through the Chair, we're aware of another cost that may be coming. We don't have the exact detail on it yet, but we understand that the waste levy that we receive some cash back for may be reduced.
And money that we've lost through government actions, that will be that. Is there anything else there?
I don't necessarily have a view on that.
Okay. Would it be appropriate to our consultation document to include a section on costs that we are passing on to our community because of government actions, either positive or negative? Costs and benefits, potentially?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think we probably could say something around the costs, particularly costs attributed from government to us, and I guess communicate that to our community.
Excellent. Would you need a recommendation to do that?
No.
Okay, good. Thank you. I look forward to reading that.
I understand there's another one, but it's very small, the REM Authority. We fund that as well, operationally. Another one that we've just found through the grapevine. Councillor Barrett.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. A couple of questions left on my list. In terms of that consultation document, it seems like one of the big effects that we've felt through this is the changing investment priorities coming out of NZTA. So will that be clarified through to the community as to why we're not seeing a lot of what we had expected?
Through Mr. Mayor, I think that would probably be something that we would have in there because it's a change from the long-term plan.
Yeah, great, thank you. I'm trying to understand a little bit around this recycling contamination mission that we want to launch. Kim, in your slides, you indicated that this was a 65K OPEX cost. In the papers, it indicated it was to purchase a vehicle, and that vehicle would have only one purpose, which was to ensure that somebody was to go out to inspect. So I'm just trying to understand what the situation is here.
Yeah, that's a really good question. The program that we already have, I think it's 2338 off the top of my head, is for the purchase of that vehicle. What we need is a driver. And so if we don't get that 65,000 of OPEX, our recommendation is to defer that by a year, or we add the OPEX so we have the driver to check those bins and hopefully drive good habits for the recycling team.
Great, thank you. And the current level of monitoring that's happening in that service?
Through the microphone for the record, are very minimal.
Cool, thank you. Some commentary already about the overtime, and it was in your slides as well. How much do we rely on overtime, and what's the additional increment of cost to council by choosing to use, well, by using overtime rather than avoiding the use of overtime?
So the cost of overtime is approximately 600,000 in a year. I guess if you don't provide for it, there are some things that we simply have to respond to, but I guess it could impact on our ability to do so if we don't actually provide for overtime.
So it is your view that that cost is being as controlled as it can be?
Yes, yes it is.
And why do you have that view?
Chris Tober, GM Infrastructure, just to provide a little bit more context. Often it's quite cyclical, so at this time of the year, for instance, grass is growing crazily and those teams are really, really busy. So I guess we work really hard to try and optimise the workforce, and sometimes for short-term peaks, the most cost-effective way is to do a little bit more overtime. But in other times of the year, of course, you don't need to. So I suppose, you know, we would also look at, you know, temp hires or casual workers as well. But we do certainly look at that and try and minimise it. But it is just one of the ways that you have to get through unexpected peaks, or, you know, maybe there's you know, high levels of staff absences because of sickness and what have you.
Great, thank you. Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Dennison.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just in regards to our council position around the third-party sponsorship or funding for some of the community projects particularly, I just wanted to get an update on how we've been tracking to date with that being a focus.
Through Mr. Mayor, I can probably give a bit of a general update, but maybe not so specific. So, the team are engaging with our third-party funders extensively, and have actually developed a pack that they have to help them understand what the opportunities are. I feel, I guess my feeling on it from what I'm observing is that whilst the environment isn't necessarily an easy one, because there's not a lot of them, but a lot of people asking for some form of funding, we're being relatively, we're in a pretty good place with that. So I guess there's, as some examples, there are some applications that we have in train at the moment that perhaps in past years we haven't necessarily gone for, because we've expanded our reach as to who we might apply to. So, yeah, the team are doing some good work in that space.
Okay, thank you. Just in regards to our capital program being executed, we've got our quarterly report, but now we're concluded month 5 of our year. How are we tracking as far as percentage of work being achieved against the capital budgets overall? Have we gotten the most recent update?
I can probably answer that one. Just actually had a governance meeting on yesterday, Monday afternoon. So I think at this stage where I'm wanting to say something about, we're probably behind spend by budget spend by about 15%, I think it was. But we've gone through, you know, we regularly go through the program and look at the projects and try and determine whether they're actually off track or just, you know, the spending's, you know, we're not just spending to it. So at this stage we're looking at, I'm happy that we're on track with our capital program.
So you've followed that up. So we're 15% behind, but you've got confidence that there's ability to catch that before we...
Some projects that have just been a little bit slower due to weather. You know, we obviously had a couple of months of quite a lot of weather. Other things that it probably comes down to just the phasing of the budgets. Yeah, so I think at this stage we're feeling pretty comfortable.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Wood.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, team. Just on page 143, one question, and it jumped out to me reading these budgets. There's $2.6 million there to fund councillor meetings and administration. Of course, millions remuneration, but there's $1.3 million for other operating expenses. I just want to get an understanding of what does that fund? I mean, that works out to around $75,000 per meeting that we have. Seems like an exorbitant amount of money, but I'm sure there's some good reason for it. So I'm just interested as to what it is.
So that's the direction setting sub-activity you're looking at?
This is under governance and active citizenship, councillor meetings and administration, page 143, 36 of attachment 3.
Sorry, I've just read the comment now below so I know which budget I'm talking about. That's related to the private hearings. So it also has, these activities have some of the plan change spend in there, and that sort of stuff as well. So that's what the consultancy firms are used in there.
And so regarding the other operating expenses going up 100,000, more than we'd budgeted to go up? Is that an overhead allocation?
I might just pass that one to Hannah, whose budget.
Kia ora through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, so it's all of the hearings costs for any RMA hearing. So yes, private changes, but also all of your district plan changes. So it's your commissioner costs. It's also the costs of any elected members that sit on those panels. And the change in the budget is because of the shift of the timing of the hearings that are going to be coming in the next financial year.
Makes sense, thank you. Perhaps a slightly different heading for that budget could be useful. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right. Thank you, Cam. Thanks, Scott. That's our questions done. All right. In terms of our recommendations, there's a number there, and the way we'll do this is we'll look at key assumptions first, and I have a number of amendments, and we'll go through them as they're listed there, and then we'll come back and agree to some of the recommendations. So the first one, and we'll list it there, is A1A, assumptions, and that's around council confirming the proposed budget for remuneration as being 63 million, being the 62.5 million as outlined in the long-term plan 24-34, plus another $500,000 for positions which are offset with additional revenue. Now that's from Councillor Naylor and seconded by Councillor Meehan. Councillor Naylor.
Thank you, colleagues. Just to start, if you have got your piece of paper in front of you, just to explain, it is different to what I had originally intended, just in response to hearing the officers' answer to questions and understanding that that 0.5 was actually offset by revenue. But I will explain this a little bit. But just to proceed that, I do want to give some context to why I am actually proposing an adjustment at this point, because I think thinking back to other debates at this point at the stage of the annual budget, sometimes colleagues will say, let's just leave everything in, see what our community think, and then we can always make changes later. My view is very much that I think we should present a draft annual budget to our community that we believe is reasonable and fair. At the moment, I think there's what's proposed is too high. I think if we were to propose 8.9 or what may well end up to be over 9% by the time other things get included, 1 year after a 10% increase, I think it would show that we were quite out of touch with where our community's at and what they're saying that they can afford. I have heard comments even today and over in recent months about the impact of government requiring adding costs to the rates, and that is absolutely true. However, the majority of the increases that we are proposing do have a significant amount of it's about the decisions we make around this table. We do have the ability to change what we're asking of our community by the decisions we make. So I'd like to try and focus on some of those decisions today, you know, whilst also being very uncomfortable with what the government does impose. But there's a lot that we can do to minimise the impact to our community, and that's where my focus is. Having a look at the information that was provided to us, particularly the graphs on page 74, which I referred to. Sorry, just quickly bringing that up. The things that are driving that 8.9% increase have obviously changed. There's a positive impact from lower rates, lower interest costs, etc., which is really pleasing, and I would have liked to have thought that we could pass those savings on to our ratepayers in terms of a lower rates increase. When we look at the labour costs, and thanks to the officers for providing the answers and breakdown of that, you'll see on page 73 the current 59.3 million, then the 62.5 on the personnel line. The 62.5 million, that is what we had provided for through our long-term plan year 2 provision. That's a 5.4% increase. Then for that to be the draft annual budget to be a further 1.7 million on top of that being 64.2 reflects an 8.4% increase. I guess I did have to ask myself, is that necessary, particularly in the current environment where that is one of the components that is definitely increasing the race increase in our draft annual budget. I'm comfortable with the fact that 500,000 of that additional FTE is fully offset by revenue. So that's why I have made that adjustment to what I'm proposing today. My view that 5.4% increase of the original increase that was agreed through LTP, with the current labour cost index that has been confirmed by Stacey this morning and the way that's tracking, I would have thought that the 5.4% should be enough to accommodate some of the adjustments in terms of vacancies and overtime. Colleagues, our job is to approve the overall bucket, and how that's operationalised is in the hands of the Chief Executive. I know this is a really sensitive thing to get up and talk about and for us to debate, because we all value our staff and they will work really hard, and I'm confident that our staff are well looked after, and that's certainly reflected through the changes in recruiting being easier and retaining staff being easier, and that's a really positive thing, and we want to keep that. But at the same time, we need to balance that with how much we ask of our community to continue those increases. And when the labour cost index is sitting well below what we're asking and what's proposed in this paper, then I think it's something worthy of our consideration. So what I'm proposing is to confirm a $63 million budget, which is 1.2 less than what's proposed in this budget, but is 0.5 million more than what was agreed in the long-term plan. So that's made up, and my rationale for that, it's the 62.5 that was agreed through the long-term plan plus the 500 for the additional FTE that has revenue that fully offsets that. I hope I've made that clear. This is not something I love doing, but in looking through that chart on page 74, it's certainly one of the things that stands out. It's 3.6% of the rates increase out of that 8.9 is down to this increase, and we do need to increase that, absolutely. I'll confirm that, but whether we need to increase it by 8.4%, I do question that at this time.
Can I just ask the Office of the CE specifically, just because this is actually operational, the labour rate costs that have been questioned, and what would this do if this was to pass?
Yeah, through the chair, because there's two components to the 1.2 mil as been outlined. One is overtime for staff. And I think as the GM infrastructure outlined as well, we have a number of staff out there at the moment mowing lawns and those sorts of things. And when things break in the middle of the night, we send crews out to fix pipes and those sorts of things. Now, I'm not saying that those things might not still occur, but the timing or the level of service that might be associated with achieving the outcomes that you might like to see in the city might very well be reduced as a result. The other aspect of that 1.2 mil is as a result of us working out or through turnover previously. It may mean that we just simply hold vacancies open for longer periods of time than we envisage that we would do. Now, what that does is that puts pressure on staff that already are working in the organisation. So,
can I just ask just about the because I've got my views and I'll share them in a moment, but just on the the rate, the market rate, which the councillor did bring up some good points.
Yeah, so the rate is what we look at is effectively lag indicators. So we're always looking at the year that has passed rather than the year forward, as Stacey presented in her presentation. So at some point in time, if we see through the course of the next couple of years that those inflationary rates decrease, we'll see that reflected in the staff budgets in a year or 2 years' time from where we currently are now.
Okay. All right. Councillor, you're in the queue? Oh, okay. All right. Councillor Mann.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just got to say, I'm backing this because of what we heard from Stacey, and she referred to that it's going to be tight for the next 12 months as well. It's not going to get lighter. So we need to all tighten our belts. We've heard about businesses struggling everywhere. What's the main reason they struggle? Because householders don't have the money to go out and spend at their businesses. And for us to put it through the long-term plan, that there'd be a 8% rise, and then now it'll already be at 8.9, as we all know, that'll creep a little bit more, and then we'll try and bang it back a bit, and it'll creep a little bit more, you know. So I just want to point out that we need to all tighten our belts, and this isn't a shot at staff or anything else. We realise how tight that is, but we need to lead. We need to lead the way. We need to tighten it up, just like we're expecting every other business around the city to tighten up and still survive. Okay, so that's all I've really got to say. Just want to know that I totally understand the situation of staffing and staff. Not knocking that, but just think we need to look at every area we can at just pulling back.
Councillor Harpiter.
I wasn't going to support this, but I am, and I do have sympathy for the overtime, because you do count on having to pay overtime in those circumstances when you have to pay it and you don't know you're going to have to pay it. So I do have sympathy for that budget, but I'm also of the mind that we do have to pull back, and if it's for levels of service, then it might be for levels of service. We might have to pull back in areas that we might have to pull back in. So I am going to support this one. I'm definitely not looking at some of those others on that list, Councillor, but I am definitely looking at this one only, and I will pull back and I will support this amendment going forward. Thank you.
So, back to you, Councillor Naylor, before you write a reply, can I just understand this does not include the overtime that's been...
Are you asking me, Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
So my view is that it's our job as elected members to approve the overall bucket, and how that's applied is down to the CE. That's an operational issue. So how much of that gets used for baseline salaries or how much of it gets used for overtime would be at the discretion of the CE. It's not my role to start to specify that.
Okay, so you haven't included anything around overtime. You've just put it...
Okay, so do you want me to answer that? So my view on that is that the 5.4% increase that's included in the LTP provision of 42.5, given that the labour cost index is under 4 at the moment, there is some room there that some of that could be used for that if that's how the CE chose to use that. So what I'm suggesting, and with the trends that, as Stacey suggested, that likely going lower in over the next 12 months, I thought that does actually still provide room for accommodating overtime or vacancies if that's the priority to the CE.
Okay. All right. There's nobody else in the queue, so you can carry on if you'd like to. Is there any right? Yeah. Okay. Done. All right. We'll vote on...
I thought you were going to speak.
No, I'm not.
Oh.
Okay. All right, councillors, we've got the amendment there, and again, just confirming that it's around the proposed budget for remuneration being 63 million, and moved by Councillor Naylor, second by Councillor Meehan, and we will vote on that, please. That is passed, 9 votes for and 6 against. Okay, we've got the next 1A, and this is around recommendations to council. This is substantive. That council instruct executive to prepare a draft of the consultation document and supporting information for the annual budget 25-26 for consideration by the council at its meeting on the 12th of February 25, and that it contains A, key assumptions outlined in section 4, including agreed motion, which that we've just passed. Okay, I'm happy to move that, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. I'm not going to speak any further on that in the interest of time because we've got a lot of other amendments. So I'll ask you to please vote on this. That has passed, 15 votes for and none against. Okay, we'll now move to the next one, which I think is 1A, 1B. And this is around programs, and that council defer the following programs by 1 year to be considered as part, and we're going to do these separately, to be considered as part of deferred by 1 year, considered as part of the 26-27 budget. And this is around program 1194, the CET Arena Master Plan. And that's moved by Councillor Naylor, totalling 8,168,000, and seconded by Councillor Barrett. Councillor Naylor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to draw your attention, colleagues, to page 169 of our agenda. The reason that I'm proposing some changes to the Capital New program is that this is an area that we do have a lot of control over. What is proposed in terms of the level of service or the Capital New this year was 39.9 million. What's proposed in the coming year is 68.1 million, which is I think a pretty huge step up. What's that, about 28 point something million? That's more than, it's well over half again. So if you look at the line above that, what we see is that 36.6 million of that 68 million is in the is categorised in the strategic area. So that's not legally required, that's not critical. That's the stuff that has been indicated to us by officers that we do have a lot of choice about. So when we say to our community, oh, your rate's going up because of everything the government's doing, yes, it's true, but the rates are also going up because choices that we are making to do stuff that we do have choice about. In the papers that came to us in the November meeting, there were 4 big items that had been outlined by officers. Councillor Isabella and I were interested in discussing this then, but really it got too late in the day. 4 of those items, one is the Pacifica investment, one is Te Motuapotua investment, one is a resource facility, and this was the 4th one. Those were all big items that I think added up to about 20 million in this year. This investment is about $17 million over the next 2 years, 8.168 this next year and about 8.8 or 8.9 the following year. The CET Arena has recently had $17 million invested in it. There's a lot of talk about the economic benefit of the CET Arena, and there's definitely some truth to that. Whether adding this investment to whether that makes there any more economic benefit, I really question. So I think we can, this is also an area that requires a significant amount of subsidisation by rates. So costs us about 10 million to deliver. There's about 2.5 revenue, costs about 7.5 that we're asking our ratepayers to subsidise. And that certainly grows if we progress this. This is something that I think could be put off for a year and reconsidered in the next 26-27 budget. I realise there'll be many of you around the table who would like to see this progress. I'm suggesting it's something that we could pause on for a year and reconsider next year. Through the long-term plan submissions, we actually heard users of Arena 5 saying they felt that was quite fine as it is. Obviously, there's other people with different views. It obviously needs to be addressed at some point, but I don't think it's so urgent that that has to happen in the next 12 months. So I would really encourage you to consider this item or any other capital new item that we have choice about, and whether that has to happen in the next year. A lot of the increases that are being proposed in the coming years are to manage the debt that is growing very rapidly. I can't remember the page, but somewhere in here, the amount of stuff that we would be looking to do would require about over $60 million more debt in the coming year. And whilst that doesn't always translate automatically to next year, because only 50% of the interest costs are attributed to next year's rates, the full 100% kicks in the following year. So it affects this next year's rates and the following year's rates if we try and tackle a capital new program as big as what's proposed.
Councillor Dennison.
Mr. Mayor, would you allow a question to officers on this? In the current financial year, there's a $500,000 provision for master plan redevelopment. Have we progressed that? Can I get an update on just the status, how far we are? It hasn't been reported.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So at this stage, we are doing some work around procurement options and design.
And is there a indicative timeline where that might be landed? And is it likely that it will be concluded by the end of the financial year to actually start progressing a build of this sort of nature?
I don't think we'll be into build. One of the things that we're considering is whether we would do that particular project by a design build contract. So we've got a bit of work to go through considering the process for that, because it's not something that we've done some small ones, but we'd need to think very carefully how we do that. So I suppose the work that we're doing at the moment, what I'd imagine may still take a couple of months, would look at that. We will be into probably working with the steering group on that early in the next year around the process for that. And I would envisage we would be looking to do kick off the procurement by hopefully the end of the first quarter or thereabouts.
So I'm picking up from your response that to defer all of this into the year 3 of our long-term plan could be problematic if we go to a design build, and that would need at least a portion of this kept in that year 2 budget we're considering now.
Yeah, I think so. So often with a design build, you might get down to a couple of 2 or 3 short list, and you might give them each a little bit of money to do some concept designs and what have you to help with that. That's a very successful way of making sure you know what you're getting into. So ideally, we'd want to be in the position to be able to do that if that was where we landed.
Final question, Mr. Mayor. Would a figure of, say, half that figure for now as a provision still be a reasonable expectation to kind of keep things progressing, understanding that we've still got a bit of consideration and review.
I'd probably have to go back and check, but, so what are we talking at the moment? It's about 500, is it?
Yeah, say if it was reduced to 5 million, would that be suitable to continue the project and have the rest in the year 3 budget for the completion? Just to give a bit more space to the project rather than essentially what I'm interpreting as kicking it.
Yeah, it's hard to say, I guess, if we were starting, you know, look, I don't have a good sense at this point how long that construction period would be. So, look, just hard to say. So I couldn't give you a clear answer. I'd be guessing.
I can accept that.
Yeah,
I might speak. I'm going to vote against this recommendation to delete it essentially, because we have indicated this is an important part of the master plan. But I would say that we need to be in a good space to execute a project of this size and have a level of comfort of the design build project, just understanding this is the largest one we would be embarking on. I'd be more comfortable if we reduced the budget and just scenario figuring, you know, down to a 5 million kind of thing to make it some saving, understanding that it would still complete the project in year 3. It doesn't kick it out a whole year. I think we can still progress it with a sum figure like that, but for pureness of this recommendation, I'm going to oppose. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor. Look, I'm obviously opposed to it because I was one really pushed hard for it. But I think the councillor might end up getting something that she wants eventually, because I do think, like you, councillor, there might be some lag around the process. Design and build there's a lot of work at the start, and you do that to get the surety on the price, surety on the contract, so there's a bit of upfront work. Will that be ready in time? I'm possibly picking it won't, but we do need to keep something in there. We're just not sure yet. I think by February we might have a little bit more of an inkling. Certainly around deliberations we'll know exactly where we're hitting. You know, we signed a contract with the community on this and previously, so I've realised people want to drive the rates down, but actually there's a whole lot of people that do want this too. And when I look at what's happening around the country, our arena, our stadia is incredibly well used, incredibly efficient, and actually we've got national sports organisations that have made some forward decisions on where they're going and what they're doing because of what we've done in this chamber. So I'd hate to think that we go back on that. I appreciate that what we're trying to do, and you might get there in the end with some of this anyway, with the lag, but I would hate to think that we're just going to wipe it out. It sends really, really mixed messages to people that are running events, international sports events, school events, and everything else that's happening. So it's a very big no from me, but I'm prepared to look at it once we know the lie of the land from the officers and where we can do a bit of juggling. And I'm picking that we won't be spending 8 million all in that year. So I encourage you to vote this down. Councillor Arnott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't support this. Nothing in our city creates more wealth than arena. So I'm certainly all for building it up and continuing to do that. You've said it yourself, it's our jewel and we need to keep on keeping on with it. Thank you.
The Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to add to the previous two speakers. Whenever we have a sport event going on, like many of my colleagues around the table, we try and get there to arena. And I also take the opportunity to talk to the organisers just to check how they are and so forth, and I know that Sport Manawatu do an amazing job. One of the things that I'm aware of is that, as you mentioned, we have many secondary school sports events there. They cater not just, it's not a one-off. They have juniors, they have seniors in volleyball, basketball, badminton, and of course that's not even going into the other. One of the things that I do know is that other centres around New Zealand have requested that those organisations look at them and that they go there. I did hear someone in Auckland say that they're short of about 50 courts, basketball courts, so that's across the city, and they don't have the same impact or the facility like we have here. But there is one facility down in the South Island that's chasing quite aggressively. Now, when people come here for those competitions, they're here for about a week. So that's quite considerable economically, and that's part of our revenue. They use our businesses, hospitality, accommodation. So I'd hate to see us lose that. I think, I certainly agree with what you've said and Councillor Dennison have said. I think, you know, we'll see what the lay of the land is, but I'd hate for us to delay this any further because there are people waiting in the wings. Geographically, we're central, and we've provided a great service to this point. So we don't want to lose that advantage. That's my thoughts. Kia ora.
Councillor Bowen.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Probably this comment goes for all of these amendments in the programmes space. I just don't feel like we have the information to be able to make these decisions now. I think, probably as you said, come February, we might know more. Oh, well, we will know more. We'll certainly know a lot more then about what is feasible for the next financial year, what is the right amount of money. Colleagues will know I've had some questions about this particular part of the master plan, about Barber Bell and Arena 5. And so I'm not opposed to us pushing it out if that's the right thing to do for the work programme. But I can't say today that that is the right thing to do for the work programme. I expect that this information will come back with the February report as to what needs to move from an officer perspective, and for me that will then inform a better decision-making process than this one.
Okay, Councillor, back to you for right of reply.
Thank you. I'm hearing that this program is dear to many of your hearts, and I'm well aware of that, as will be the case for pretty much all of the programs included in the strategic area of our Capital New program. The increase of 28.1 million that I referred to over and above the 39.9 that we've got this year is actually a 70% increase. So really the question I would want to pose to you is not, do you think doing Arena 5 would be a nice thing for the community? Because there's no doubt about the fact that of course it would be a nice thing for the community. The question I would pose to you is, are you comfortable with a 70% increase in the Capital New and imposing the cost of that on our community? And that's, I've got no doubt that officers can come back with more information, but if we were to support that, that would indicate a course of travel that would invite that information back. And I certainly think we've got to give officers a bit of a steer. It's helpful if we can give them a bit of a steer at this point rather than waiting till February. So yeah, I would really encourage you, if you are not willing to support this, but you do agree that a 70% increase in Capital New is perhaps more than what we should be imposing on our community, what other programs could be reduced to, so that we can actually produce an annual budget that's actually reasonable in terms of the new stuff we're trying to do.
Okay, please. And that has failed. 2 votes for and 13 against. All right, we might just break for a break now, and we're back in the chamber at 1:45. Thanks. and everything that is mounting up against us, I'm going to try and go at pace. So I'm going to make a decision that it's 3 for, 3 against in terms of these amendments, because we've still got a number to get through. And please just be respectful of your colleagues if you don't have to say anything. So, all right, B is around programs, and this is council defer the following program by one considered as part of the 26-27 budget. This is program 159 Kelvin Grove Road for 3 million, and I'll go to you, Councillor Naylor.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This really follows on from some of the discussion that happened at our November meeting, where some of us identified that we had critical roading programs that had to be deleted out of the budget, whilst at the same time we had strategic programs that had been added in. This was one, and there was another one at Stony Creek Road. Councillor Dennison suggested perhaps we should just do one and not both. I was comfortable with that view. So we've proposed this one be deferred for consideration next year. This would reduce 3 million off that capital new program. Yeah, I'd really urge you to consider supporting this.
Councillor Dennison.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yes, when the NZTA funding been reduced and didn't get nowhere near what we might have thought reasonable, this program along with Stony Creek got added. And even having a blind eye to the needs around Cliff Road to a Potua project, I think it's not just doing one or the other. We've actually ended up with 3 projects that haven't been subsidised in our budget, being fully funded through rates in our own borrowing. And so therefore I just want to take a little bit more prudent approach in this, and by deferring this one. It doesn't say it's not important, but it has been deferred year on year. It was referred to in the previous debate. But we're still doing Stony Creek Road, and we're still doing Cliff Road at multiple millions of dollars. And so without trying to do it all in 1 year, I feel like this is a reasonable request for a deferment of 1 year. Thank you, Mayor.
All right, Councillor Hapeta.
Very quickly, come on. This road has been absolutely put off and put off and put off, and I cannot support this. I'm just disgusted that you're actually thinking about it, so I will not support this. These people in Kelvin Grove have had it up to here, and we have put this off and put this off, and I cannot support this, so please do not support this. Thank you.
Councillor Hancock.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor, and absolutely ditto. Thank you, Councillor Hapeta. This is one of the most dangerous pieces of road in our city, and it has been delayed and delayed and delayed, and any further delay really be it on your head when something terrible happens on this piece of road. Thank you.
Councillor Mann.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. For the sake of time, I won't say too much. Just the same as the other two have just previously said. This has been on the books for some time and needs to be done. This road is dangerous, and for those living out there, they run near misses daily.
Is there anybody else for this? Okay, now back to you, Councillor Naylor, for a right of reply.
Yeah, really, I think the issue is not that this is not, I mean, this is important work. It's just about the timing. And when we've already got Cliff Road and we tested that at November, and there's clearly an appetite to keep that in, and we've got Stony Road. For those Stony Creek Road, that's 8.7 million just over those 3 programs. For those who want to keep this in, I'd really encourage you to consider what you could support deferring, because I just think we're spending too much in this space, especially when it's 100% rates funded.
All right, councillors, you've heard the debate. We will vote. And that has failed. 3 votes for, 11 against. All right, we'll now go to the substantive, sorry, I'm just, yep, 1B. So this is around that council instruct the chief executive to prepare a draft of the consultation document supporting information for the annual budget 2025-26 for consideration by the council at its meeting on the 12th of February 25, and that it contains B, programs as agreed, the council meeting of 6th November 24, and the attached information in attachment 4. So I'm happy to move that, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. I'm not going to speak to it. Councillor Naylor.
Just really briefly, that I won't be supporting this based on the amount that is included in attachment 4. I'm deeply uncomfortable with the cost that that would impose on our community.
All right, we will vote, councillors. And it has passed, 12 votes for and 2 against. All right, we now move into C, around operating budgets. And CI is around the local water done well transition support, 25-26, comprising expenditure of 1.5 million by way of a grant subsidy of 621,831, and the balance of 878,169 by way of a loan. And we'll look to vote on that first. So I'll look to move that, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. Councillors, I mean, it says it all, but we have to do what we have to do in this space, so ask you to support it, please. Being no other speakers, we will vote, please. And that has passed 15 votes for and against. Okay, we're looking to now C2, and I'd like to put A up, please. That A, the council increase the resource recovery operating budget by 65,000 to fund the delivery of program 2338 recycling contamination monitoring development. I'm happy to move that, seconded by Councillor Barrett. Councillors, I've put this up. There was a couple of questions within the earlier presentation, and it was around what work was being done in the space, and the answer was very little. So we either try to improve this or we just kick the can down the road. I think, yes, this is I think the cost of a person. Is that right? Yes. And I think we've got to do this work if we really want to improve that or get that contamination Okay, that is passed 12 votes for and 3 against. All right, moving through to CB3, all right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yep. If we can get that screen up, please. Okay. And this is around that council agree to referrals outlined in section 7, and they include the street lighting program, clause 12, around from the Economic Growth Committee of 120,000, and the Centrepoint Theatre from the council meeting of the 6th of November, and I'm going to leave the stuff events one because I believe that can be done through a simple submission process. Oh, and aged friendly, and my apologies, aged friendly, which should be from the council meeting of 6th of November as well, please. Okay, so we call them Palmerston North Age Friendly Action Plan for 50,000. We've got street lighting survey of 120, Centrepoint Theatre, and Centrepoint Theatre has got a multiple around in-kind support, resource consent costs. So I would just say Centrepoint Theatre as clause 198-24, council meeting 6th of November. 200. Over 2 years. There it is. It's all there. Great. I'm happy to move those. Seconder. Thank you, Councillor Bowen. Councillors, all of those have come to us via, I mean, we know how our street lighting has been a source of issue and complaint various times. We do need to get on top of that, and I'm actually, it's hard to front people when we don't do anything about it. So we do need to have an understanding of how bad, how good or bad it all is. In terms of age friendly, again, we've had multiple submissions into the council around age friendly, and we've started the process. We've got to finish it. And again, a small cost to pay in terms of the investment of that. And then finally, Centrepoint Theatre. And this is over a $5 million bill. This is council's contribution, which is relatively small for New Zealand's sole regional professional theatre. And the value they add to the city is immense. So I think our small contribution there will actually unlock the other contributions from Creative New Zealand, lotteries and the like. So it's really important that we are there in some shape or form. So I hope you can support these. Councillor Johnson.
Sorry, there's just a bit. Yeah. Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Just to say that I do support all of these, but to speak specifically to the age-friendly action plan first, which came through the community committee. We have had, I think since I came onto council, submissions around the age-friendly city, and we have, I think it'd be fair to say, just hoped really that it would happen at a community level and that we wouldn't have to do anything. But I think over the last year or so it's become clear, and definitely through the development of the age-friendly action plan, that unless we put in resourcing and some staffing to make this happen, then it can't be done by community. So I think we gave plenty of time for community to see if it could be done at their level. It couldn't be. Council has made a commitment to age-friendly status as a city, and we're a city where the demographic is ageing. And I think that we've made the commitment repeatedly in committee meetings and council meetings over the last few years, but we need to resource it adequately, otherwise it's just an empty words, it's just an empty commitment. So I would ask for your support on this. I think it's an important piece of work that will help make the city just a little bit easier for people to get around, particularly those who are ageing. And in terms of the street lighting, again, you know, for councillors who weren't here when this all started, NZTA put up some money, I think it was 90% of the cost from memory, for us to change to LED lighting. But there was a lot of, I guess, hidden issues in that changeover, some of which were around the level of lighting, some of which were around the spacing of the poles that the lighting was on, and some of it was around how that lighting would cut through if there were street trees, etc. And it's fair to say it's not really been assessed as a whole since then. We've dealt with it piecemeal with a programme to upgrade streets, but it was very clear from the reports that came through council that we are not on top of this issue at all. And I think, nobody likes extra cost, but I think street lighting is an absolute basic facility that we have to get right. And therefore, I just urge you to support this so that we can then see what needs to be done to get adequate street lighting in all the streets in Palmerston North, not just some, and not just those who've got residents that can advocate for their own street. So please support those. And in terms of Centrepoint Theatre, I think it's a very small ask from Centrepoint, considering what will be involved in their rebuild. Thank you.
Councillor Byrne.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Support all three of those, speaking particularly to the Centrepoint recommendations. Elected members, you'll see there were three elements to the support requested of council. The third one suggests the quantum of any grant funding to be determined by the council as part of the annual budget process. My suggestion would be, and I look to officers for confirmation, that come February, when you know what the in-kind support and resource consent costs are likely to be or have been, that we'd be able to put a sum on that third element there to get to that 100,000 quantum of funding in total, including in-kind and costs. So I'm happy to leave that general at this stage, expecting further information on that in February to tighten up what can go into the document itself. If that, Scott's nodding, I'll take that as a yes. Colleagues, just look for your support for all three of these, but Centrepoint in particular, as Councillor Johnson says, yeah, this is a small ask. This is a close to $6 million project. That's a big ask for a small organisation. They've committed to raising that money. As the Mayor said, the quantum of our support isn't what's actually so important here. The fact that we're supporting it is what's important. That will unlock other funding for them. Without that, some of those funding streams are closed to them, and that will probably mean this project can't be successful. So look for your support at this stage.
Now, is there anybody against? Okay, you're next, Councillor Wood.
Well, could I start, sort of, because there's three bits to this. Could I ask a question? Something strange has gone on with the streetlight recommendation. There was a line in there to refer a program to the annual budget process to start undertaking the work. My understanding when we did that is officers were going to come back with a budget for a program to refer to the process, that we're now just referring a referral into the annual budget. That doesn't seem to mean anything. So what are we doing here?
That's what we're getting an answer from in February.
Oh, okay.
That's what I understood. Streetlights.
Yes, if we go up, there's two parts to that recommendation. One is the survey, and then the other is a program to begin upgrading the already identified lights. So there's two parts to that. So I thought at this point there would be a program budget presented by officers for us to consider today.
Yeah, my understanding is that a budget of 120 is happening today, and that the officers will come back with what needs, with a list and identified of what needs to happen thereafter. Is that correct?
That wasn't the intention.
Can I just get an
Yes,
answer
that
for
was the
infrastructure?
intention,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So we probably do need to change the recommendation there at the top that, sorry, no, if we go to the second one, sorry, the first one,
Yeah.
that a budget of 120,000 to support a street lighting survey be included. Yep. Thank you. All right, and the rest makes sense. Okay.
No, I'm sorry, Mr Mayor, it doesn't make sense. So there's,
No.
there were two separate recommendations. One was about starting the work and one was about doing a survey. And the idea was we do both at the same time. So there's supposed to be two budgets being referred here, not one.
Yeah, true, but they have to do the survey work first.
You'll see in that recommendation says already identified streets listed in the roading report to the Growth Committee in June 2024. So we've already got a list, and the idea was we'd start work on that list. That's
Okay.
Could I ask for the street lighting stuff to be
Can,
separated?
we'll just,
Yeah.
we'll try and get. Right.
So your Councillor Wood's right. You've got to get it around the right way. So the intent is to do the survey first, and then from the survey results, develop a program. So it won't be June 2024. So I think what we're saying here is put budget in next year, do the audit next year, and then the program will be developed from there.
Okay.
So that June 24 can't be right.
So the following piece, the work around the upgrading of the already identified streets will be referred to the following financial
Following
years?
year, yep.
26, 27, is that right?
So I wasn't actually at that meeting, so I'm only working on what I think what Stuart's telling me.
Sorry, Councillor Johnson,
Sorry, Mr Mayor. Just when you're finished with the street lighting one, age friendly also needs to be edited to take out just a council approved option run.
Okay.
And include an additional budget of 50,000 in the draft only budget.
Okay, thank you.
It's just that because staff have copied the recommendations direct from committee, they're not worded correctly for inclusion. So they just need a bit of.
Okay, done. Councillor Wood.
All right, well, I'll ask that street lighting be separated because the intention here has been thoroughly missed. As I believe proposed or perhaps seconded the second one, they were two separate recommendations. And the discussion we had at the committee, it was when you're overseas, Mr Mayor, so I appreciate you weren't in that discussion. The discussion we had was there were two trains of thought. One was we do the street lighting survey, then start work on upgrading the street lighting. The other train of thought was, bugger the survey, let's just start upgrading our street lights with the list we've already got. They were the two trains of thought of the committee. What I supported was referring both of them to this process. Option A, that we just get on and do the work. Option B, that we do the survey, then do the work. And then we would have this debate here about what we prioritise. Will we do both? Will we do one or the other? What's been missed here is the intention was officers would come back and go, of the list of the roads we've already got, or not roads, the streets we've already got, here's what a program would look like to begin upgrading them, and there would be a figure attached with that, and then we'd debate either doing one or both of them. That has been missed, and so because that has been missed, I don't really know what to do here, because that's, now we're left with only one of the two options we had at committee, which is do the survey. My argument I put at committee and that I'll put to you here today is if the survey costs $20,000, yes, I'd support going and doing the survey and then using that to inform a course of work. Given the survey costs $120,000, I would rather just use the extensive list we've already got, albeit that it is an incomplete list, and albeit it isn't as good a list as it could be, but we've already got a number of streets we already know about. Yeah. I would rather we just got on and spent the money starting to upgrade streetlights rather than spending another year looking at what streets we might or might not upgrade. I appreciate scientifically we will get a better result if we do the survey. But in terms of practice, I would rather we just got on and started. So I don't really know what to do here, given that there is no program being proposed and there's no choice available to us. So I'm going to ask that those two be separated, I think, and I'm going to vote against doing the survey, and I'm going to go in favour of the program to begin upgrading the street lighting, be referred, and hopefully we get something back in February prior to consultation that we can consider, given that was the intention in the first place. So it's not that I'm against upgrading streetlights, I really want to do it, and it's not that I'm necessarily against a survey, but I would rather we spent the $120,000 or more just starting the work on the list we've already got. So that was the intention there. As for Age Friendly, I'm supportive of that. As for Centrepoint, I'm supportive of it being part of our consultation. I can't guarantee we will land after the conversation with our community, but I think it should be included. So I'm sorry that's a little bit complicated, but we've had a bit of a misunderstanding, I think, as to the intention of those two recommendations.
Okay, I'll just ask GM of Structure just to speak.
Yeah.
Chris.
So and I apologise, I wasn't at the last debate, or I think I was cropped, but so just to clarify, so $120,000 will get you maybe half a dozen streetlights, if you're lucky. So I think the point that was, I think what Glenn was trying to make at the last meeting was that we need to be quite careful about where we put our money until we've actually done a proper survey and know where the actual need is. We would be shooting in the dark and yes, that is so I think that's why it was putting that way. So I think the sensible thing would be is do the work next year, know exactly where we are, and then we can bring you a proper program that would be based on where the highest area of need is.
Okay, so I'm thinking the first part makes sense, and the second part does need some adjustment in the sense that the date that comes back to us is not going to be the 12th of February, is it? Because you've got to do the work. So it's really got to be, comes back to us at the soonest possible time, really. I don't think we put a date on it. Next practicable meeting.
Your list of streets.
Yep. Yeah. So look, we'll leave that next practical meeting could be February, but I'll leave that. Let's leave that for the staff because there is a little bit of confusion exactly what is going on. All right, we're going to move on this. Anyone else wishing to speak against? Councillor Naylor.
Yeah, Mr Mayor, we seem to be talking about all three things. Would like to ask to keep them separate for actual voting purposes. Is that your intention?
No, I was going to do them all together.
Well, can I ask they be separated?
Yes.
I'm not at all interested in investing $120,000 into a street lighting survey. My recollection was the same as what Councillor Wood has outlined, and I'm more interested in investing that money in the list that had already been identified and was included in that report. So in its current wording, I won't be supporting that one. In terms of the age-friendly, yeah, that's actually really important work, but I think we need to start looking at reprioritisation as a way of achieving things that are highly important, you know, rather than just keeping adding things and adding things and adding things. Things just never seem to drop off the bottom, and I think some activities should actually run for a period of time rather than everything being forever. So in terms of the Centrepoint Theatre, I will support that as outlined to see what the community have to say about that. I do have some reservations about that level of investment in the current environment, but not willing to support the other two at this stage.
Okay, anybody else against? Okay, we've got 3, 4, 2 against. So look, what we're going to do is we'll do street lighting, the first one around the survey, the second one around the program, then we'll do age friendly, then we'll do Centrepoint. So if we could do the first one, please, of street lighting, the survey. Please vote. That is passed, 11 votes for and 4 against. And we'll vote on the second part now. This is around the actual upgrade, once it's known. And that has passed 13 votes for and 2 against. Okay, now we'll go to aged friendly. And if we could vote on the action plan of aged friendly, please. And that has passed 14 votes for and 1 against. And now if we could vote on Centrepoint, please. And that has passed 14 votes for and 1 against. All right. We now move to other amendments around the operating budget, and we'll get those up. Okay. One moment, caller, we're getting there. Okay, the first one is around 1C, that Council reduce the proposed 25-26 operating budget for international relations to 300,000. That's moved by Councillor Naylor and by Councillor Barrett. Councillor Naylor.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This has had some conversation around the table in recent months and years actually, as to whether the investment in this space is providing the outcomes that we would hope it would. And certainly the 6 month or the reports that have come through do show an incredible amount of activity, but some of us have struggled to see actual outcomes for this investment. I think at a recent meeting I mentioned that when I came on to council, the Mayor suggested this was a long-term game, and certainly 8 years later I'm still waiting to see if there are some outcomes that can be identified through this activity, and I'm really disappointed not to be able to find those. So when I think it wasn't that long ago that the budget for international relations was 70,000 and now it's 512. If this is supported, that would signal quite a shift in terms of the way we do this work. 300,000 is still actually, in my view, quite a significant investment in this space, but would have to be a change to how that's done, how that work is done. It would enable some engagement and some level of interaction in this space, but not to the extent that's currently described. I think when we tested this through the long-term plan process, it failed for, or tested a reduction. It failed for a lack of majority. I think it must have been a 7-7 or 8-8 vote. I can't recall, but it was an equal vote. So it has had not a significant, not a resounding support for the ongoing level of investment. So I'm going to just, I thought it was appropriate to test that, given perhaps some of the feedback that I've heard from the community around this as well. I thought I'm happy to suggest this and see what my colleagues think. This once again would assist in the operational side. I think when we look at, if we're looking to try and pare things back, I think we need to look at capital and OPEX, and this is one area that I would put down on perhaps the lower level of importance as compared to some of our other operational investment.
Councillor Harpeder.
Do you mind if I ask a question first before I comment?
Yep.
Just to the General Manager, the impact of this on this operational budget, could you give us that impact?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, David Murphy, General Manager, Strategic Planning. Just a couple of points of clarification. Firstly, the total budget is 478, not 512. And the function actually also covers international relations and international education. So international education coordination was an activity that was brought over from CEDA about 3 or 4 years ago. So yeah, just a couple of points of clarification to assist with the debate. Ultimately, if the resolution was passed, we would have to look carefully at the resourcing. In terms of personnel and the nature of the activity, it may be transitioning back to more domestic sort of interactions with ambassadors and hosting delegations that visited the city, those sorts of things.
Thank you. I won't be supporting this recommendation. I know we are looking at cost savings and it's all about what the best we can do for our community, but this budget is a very good budget for our council. It's a hard-working budget. The people in this budget, I don't try not to talk about personnel, but work very hard in terms of trying to represent the council in a community that we can't see because we're not there. We aren't overseas. These people represent us overseas for our council and for our city. And it's very hard for them to probably promote and articulate how they do their outcomes for us and how they translate that to us of how well they are doing. And I think that's probably just for us to understand how well they are doing so that we can see what the outcomes are. But from an international education point of view, I think they are doing very, very well. And I think to punish them by taking 300,000 away would mean that basically we are taking a staff member away. And we got this role from CEDA as a gift, and I think we should treasure that gift. So thank you. Let's treasure the gift we got, and please don't support this recommendation.
Councillors, look, I think this is about the fourth time I've had to, I mean, it does, you know, there was a comment here this morning that leaders should just listen, and I'm doing that with grated teeth. But actually, I think this is about the fourth time I've had to defend this work. And we always get the figures all mixed up, but actually the OPEX or the staff budget's 383. So you take 300 out. I think Mr. Murphy was being kind. You'd kill it off. You kill the program off. So I do, and you know, there's shaking heads in the background, but it's truth. Look, the program work isn't just all offshore because it's domestic as well, and the support of partners that have skin in the international game. I'll just tell you just a little bit of what I've done over the last 2 weeks in terms of international. We've hosted the Swiss ambassador. Now, there's 3 big Swiss businesses owned here in Palmerston North, and because we've got an international focus, have a guess who guides that delegation round. It isn't councillors, it isn't other staff, it's our international team. Those companies include Norwood, DKSH and Norsk Rail. They employ literally hundreds and hundreds of people. The Australians, they own Premier Bacon. They've got their national distribution centre here. I just met the owners and management just last week. Yes, their numbers are a bit smaller, but they're incredibly part of our logistics sector. We've got the Italians owning New Zealand Pharmaceuticals. They were here just recently, and Rangitane welcomed them. And there's more to come in that space. But we've got the Chinese with pet food, we've got the Japanese with considerable amount of investment here. So we're probably New Zealand's most regional city with the most international foreign investment, and that's with your international outlook. I won't even go into international education because that's a given. So I get a little bit sick of there's no outcomes. Food HQ, heard this morning, another around research. So the Multicultural Council and the impact that would have on the festival cultures would be quite dramatic. So this is Yeah, I'll bite my tongue. I just feel like we're just picking games here and it's quite political. So please don't vote for this. It's rubbish. Deputy Mayor.
Kia ora, Mr Chair. Similar to you, I suppose I want to sort of remind everyone that Palmerston North City is made up of a diverse group of people. We celebrate that and we acknowledge that brings vibrancy, that brings a whole lot of strength and wonderful things to our city. We do have a global reputation and it's a positive one. There's no less than 3/4 of our high schools, well, you talked about, you won't go in the education thing, but no less than 3/4 of them in Palmerston North City, and even extended out to the wider region, are involved in educational exchanges. I think that it was quite telling when I spoke to one of the ambassadors, I think it was the ambassador from France, when they came earlier this year, had said that this was when Palmerston North calls a meeting or invites them to come to Palmerston North, that's the largest group of ambassadors that meet together. And they come because they know that Palmerston North City is responsive and also open to exchanging knowledge and ideas. One of those things that you talked about, those businesses, I went to the opening earlier this year of the Australian Defence Apparel, and they have located themselves here based on the reputation that we have, based on the opportunities that they have as well. And so we'd be fooling ourselves saying that that isn't part of the team that works behind the scenes. And you know what? That's a skinny team. It's a team of about 2 people. You take away this sort of budget, you'd be down to 1, it'd be impossible to run. So, I really support I don't support this. I think that we need to maintain what we've got, because once you lose something, kia ngaro pērā ki te moa, it will be lost, just like the moa is lost to us. It will become extinct and it will be hard to get back. Kia ora.
Is there anybody else in favour of this? Okay, right, a reply back to you, Councillor.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just want to correct a few things. No, I'm not proposing to take 300,000 away from this budget. I'm proposing for the budget to be 300,000. So it is the budget, full budget is outlined on page 117. The expenses is 512, but the net budget is 478, as the GM has outlined. So the reduction would be from that net budget 178. Leaving 300. So certainly the intent is not to punish anyone. The intent is to invest wisely on behalf of our ratepayers. I don't think anything would become extinct if we're still investing 300,000. That would still give us the capacity to host international visitors. My recollection, when we had 1 person in that department, there was a significant amount of activity that still occurred when the budget was much smaller. So I'd really encourage you to consider this. The Festival of Cultures is not funded through the international relations budget, it's funded through the events budget. And whilst it is incorporated sometimes in the reports that come through to us, that's not how it's funded. So this would not compromise events that we run such as that. It's just some of those comments that have come in may have been a little bit misleading. So once again, this is a reduction. It's a measured reduction, and I do believe we could still continue the work in an appropriate way, perhaps a more proportionate way to the size city that we have, rather than the way that it has escalated. There's a lot of activity, perhaps, that I don't see any good outcomes from. So I would urge you to consider this just in terms of us needing to really look at all our budgets and whether it's all necessary.
Okay, councillors, we will vote, please. And that has failed. 1 vote for, 14 against. Okay. Our next And this is around council reducing the proposed 25-26 operating budget for city marketing is reduced by 200,000. Councillor Naylor, do you wish to speak to this or not?
Yep, just briefly. I'll keep it really brief. This is an area where we have invested significantly once again, and if we're having to prioritise, I think it's something that we could reduce. So I'd urge you to consider that. It's also one that has grown by 100,000 in terms of the reports, but once again, some of that may be transfer from the overheads.
Councillors, I'm not going to support this. I believe it's linked to the eyesight. Again, we'll be cutting off our nose to spite our face just to save a couple of $100K. Could I ask the GMs, it is linked to the eyesight? It is, yeah, thank you. Councillor Harper.
I was going to ask where it was associated, so I won't be supporting it. Thanks very much.
Councillor Johnson.
Yeah, I'm not going to be supporting it. And I think at a time where we're seeing reduced confidence in council, we need to be actually focusing on how we communicate with people. So I think it would be very short-sighted to cut this budget just at the moment and possibly achieve the opposite of what we're hoping to achieve. So, and whilst I've got the floor, I'm just, this is a new development bringing in these cuts at this stage. You know, previously what we've done at this point is we've gone out with the draft of year 2, and then we've made any amendments or changes after we've heard back from the community. So I do hope this isn't going to be a regular occurrence now that we have to have a round of cuts before we go out, and then another round when we come back in, and then another round again. I just think this is a new development, and not one that I hope will be continued. Thank you.
Okay, do you want to write a reply, Councillor? No. Okay, we will vote, please. Move through to the substantive. Oh, one more. Okay. This is from Councillor Wood around reducing the professional services budget by $1 million and creating a new $1 million internal capability or capacity building budget to be used for professional development, internal capacity support and staff remuneration. And this will be referred to the 26-27 annual budget deliberations. Councillor Wood.
So I'm quite excited to be here not proposing a cut and talking about something much more positive. I'll explain that in a moment because I appreciate councillors are confused as to the word of the motion. So this comes from out of a place that we should be investing in our people. This is an idea that came to me. It would have been ideal if it had come to me in the long-term plan, but anyway, we're here now, is that we reduced our professional services budget by $1 million with very little issue or concern. I think it was almost a unanimous vote, and that didn't sit particularly well with me, in that I would rather than just cutting budgets as a cost-saving measure, actually build the capacity of our own team to deliver those services as we go through the process. It's the old adage, give a man a fish, you feed him for a day, teach a man to fish, you'll feed him for a lifetime. If we invest in our own people through an internal capacity building budget, rather than just investing in our consultancy firms, I think we'll get a much better result. So I do apologise this hasn't come through the long-term plan, and that's the reason that I'm suggesting we also refer this at this stage to the 26-27 annual budget deliberations. I've been advised we're allowed to do that. The reason for that is this would serve 3 functions. One is professional development, so upskilling our staff we already have. One is supporting the internal capacity of our staff, so whether that is something like funding overtime to support a particularly difficult piece of work, whether it's funding a consultant to come and write a report alongside one of our staff members on a particularly complicated matter so that we then learn how to do it and deliver it ourselves, or whether it's for staff remuneration, that there's a particularly specialised area of need that we need to either bring in on a fixed term or a long-term basis. The concern is, particularly around that third element of staff remuneration. If it's only a 1-year budget, well, obviously it would be very difficult for the Chief Executive to have confidence in his ability to utilise it for that purpose if it's only going to be existing for 1 year. So that's why I think it's important we refer it to 26-27 process. And again, I apologise, councillors, I hadn't thought of this prior to the long-term plan. The response I've had from councillors and officers has been quite positive so far. We spend, and I can't remember the exact figure, it was somewhere around that $12 million mark on professional services, I believe is what we reduced to at the long-term plan. So this is a suggestion that we reduce that by 1 million to around that 11 mark, and we create a budget that then funds the support of our own internal capacity. So this is particularly controversial. I look forward to discussion, and I hope this is a thoroughly sensible thing we can do to support our own team.
Okay. Councillor Barrett.
Thanks. I now have questions about even more dates appearing in the recommendation. Why do we have additional dates in there, and what is the intent?
Apologies. For clarity, so my understanding is Councillor Wood's intention is for this to happen for this annual budget debate, but also that it be considered again in year 3.
Yeah. So we do it for this year, and then we consider it for year 3.
Thank you. With that clarification, can I understand any potential lag issues that might be experienced in 25-26, where we've given away our opportunity to access professional services on demand, but we may have yet to have recruited, have yet to have upskilled, and have yet to build that internal capacity? Will we have knock-on effects in terms of capital delivery or other aspects of delivery from the organization?
Through the chair, given the fact that we've only just sort of seen this in the last day or so, I'd need to go through and work that out. Obviously, we've got time to have a bit more of a think about this leading up to February and even beyond that towards when you make a final decision. It is just moving things around a little bit. It's no reduction in budget as such.
Thank you. Not sure who would answer this question, but given that we've just had a vote that cut something, I think, more than $1 million out of remuneration, what is the implication of this particular recommendation?
I mean, looking at this as well, and I guess I could say internal capacity, being used for internal capacity support, is that giving me opportunity to kind of place it where I think it's most needed. But I think the intention with this is looking at upskilling our staff, professional development, in order to be able to utilise our own staff to undertake some of the work that consultants are actually undertaking for us now into the future. Again, alongside your previous question, it's probably just some more thinking that we just need to do about that at the moment.
Thank you. And my final question, if this were positioned to be reported for further information in the 12th of February rather than try to be landed at 4:40 on the 11th of December, would we be in a better position as a council to make a decision around where we go?
We would attend, whatever resolutions you make and agree on, then our job is to go away and provide further information on how we could go about achieving that. So we will work as diligently as we can in order to be able to provide you some more decent information for the February meeting. But if we can't at that point, then we would certainly do that before you made a final decision in June.
Thank you. I'm seeing an indication across, but I'll just briefly speak to say I do appreciate Councillor Wood bringing this forward, and I actually think it's an innovation that we should be turning our mind to, and that probably has some inherent merit. I'm reluctant, though, at this stage, given some of the questions around implications that officers have only recently seen this, that it could have some knock-on effects. I'd just like to have a way to pause and see if we could pick it up in February. Thank you.
We can just lift it. I don't want to waste time on it. So if you're comfortable with that. Okay. What we do is just put a new recommendation up that we just ask the CE to look at this. That the Chief Executive be asked to look at. Oh. Okay then. I can see you well. Yeah. All right. So look, is there anybody else wishing to speak to this? We're just looking at it. Councillor Naylor.
I'd want him to report back on it, not just look at it.
It's reporting back.
Oh, sorry. And the other question is just a question really, in terms of the professional development, I did ask a question last year during the LTP, what the provision was, and I thought was it 1% that's already provided for in terms of staff for professional development, or will that come back in that report?
Through the chair, this, as I understand this, is that this is looking to actually take money from our professional services contractors budget and then add that to professional development. So we could include bringing back what it is that we already currently do in the professional services space. Look, we've got the conversation in that now anyway. I think that we're able to pick that up.
Thank you. I'm comfortable.
Okay. All right. You don't need to write a reply. Oh, sorry. Councillor Bowen.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I don't mind the idea of an internal capacity building budget. Probably sensible. Probably something the CE is already thinking about because he looks at things all the time. I don't know about reducing the professional services budgets to achieve it. So what I'm interested in you coming back with on the 12th of February is going, if we wanted to do that internal capacity building budget, where would you recommend we took that money from to achieve those outcomes? Because I don't know that that's the best budget to do that. I want to do it within existing budgets. That makes sense. What's the switch you would offer here? That's what I'm after.
Councillor Johnson.
I'm not going to support this, and I think that if any of us wants to be the CE, we should apply for the job. This is like a really operational decision. The CE has the money in his budgets to decide whether it be spent on professional services or internal capacity building. I don't really think this is an elected member decision, to be perfectly honest, so I shall not be supporting it.
Okay, I will give you a right of reply, Councillor.
Well, I just disagree. When we're spending over $10 million on consultancy, I think it's absolutely an elected member decision to give some guidance that we'd like to see us building our own internal capacity and give that direction to the Chief Executive. The conversations I've had with staff are all broadly positive. It's, as Councillor Bowen said, sort of the direction they're already looking at. And so let's give them the facility to do it. And yes, I agree with Councillor Bowen. If there is another place this could be reprioritised out of, I'm more than open to that idea. And I imagine that's what Chief Executive will come back with. Like any new budget, I appreciate I haven't written a 5-page document explaining exactly how it's going to work and where it's going to go, and that's not my business to do. So the questions around, well, exactly how will this work, that's up to our operational team to determine. So I can appreciate that it's useful for this to come back with a bit more information in February as it's a new idea, but I reject the assertion that councillors can't propose new ideas because we haven't got huge policy documents explaining what the back end of them will look like. I mean, any new idea needs to be developed by operational teams. So I hope council will support this as a thoroughly sensible idea for our Chief Executive and team to look at.
Okay, we will vote. And that is passed, 12 votes for, 3 against. Okay, we'll do the substantive, I think. Yeah. So, this is around operating budgets as outlined in Amendments 1 to 3, including as amended above. I'm happy to move that. Seconded by Deputy Mayor. And I'm not going to speak to it any further. And we will vote, please. Okay, passed. 15 votes for, none against. Thank you. All right, we'll just go to our last, is the work schedule on page 259. And I'm happy to move. Council receives its work schedule dated 11th of December 2024. Moved, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. Are there any comments to that? There being none, we'll vote. Passed, 15 votes for and none against. Okay, we now look to move into part 2, and for reasons on the screen around negotiations, privacy and third-party commercial, and I'll look to move that, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. He's here. Yeah. He's in the back row. It's noted. Okay, we'll vote, please. Going to try. I've moved everything back half an hour. Yep, they'll just have a drink while we're waiting. Or 0.5 of a drink because we cut the budget.